Hey guys, Three and Out has its own YouTube channel, and we plan on doing coward type numbers. Here's the key. If you're watching this, you like our content, make sure you subscribe. Subscribe to the page, leave a comment, interact with our stuff. We do stuff on this page on a daily basis. 365. Three and Out podcast right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe right now. My take on Jim Harbaugh, because there's a lot floating out. You know, Adam Schefter talking about it. He signs with Don Yee, who's Brady's longtime agent, Jimmy Garoppolo's guy. I hope he stays in college. I want him at Michigan. I think he means more to college, the fabric of it, the entertainment value. Like, college is the number 2 sport in America right now. The NFL's here, college is here, and everyone else is fighting for the scraps, right? And I think you need – the NFL has a ton of characters. The NFL's fine. We've proven it, right? You lost Brady, you lost Manning, Rodgers played 4 plays, didn't matter. Historic ratings, everyone's watching. Whether you got Bill Parcells or Nick Sirianni, it does not matter. Mike McCarthy or Jimmy, no one cares anymore. It's the product, it's what we gamble on, it's what we all agree that we consume. College football, to me, is a little predicated on the big programs, being right, and the talent. Forever college basketball, when I was young, was a major sport in America in terms of ratings, in terms of interest. All their coaches were really famous. Like, college basketball was better with Coach K, with Tom Izzo, Jim Boeheim, all those guys staying in college football. Now, just because I think he should stay, I don't know if he will. Like, I think Jim Harbaugh, the clip, I believe this, Jim Harbaugh's parents, Jack and Jackie, if you haven't seen the clip, just Google it. They're on the field. His mother was stunned that they won. I mean, stunned that they won, which was just funny. Obviously, Jack is like a 25-year-old version. I think Jim's 60. I'd guess Jack's 85, early, mid-80s. And he's like Jim Harbaugh right now. Colin said this, I think they're next-door neighbors. Imagine Jim build him a house. And family means a lot to the Harbaughs, which I always get emotional, having lost my dad, seeing that type stuff. Like, that's powerful. That's really cool. I don't think we talk enough about that in society, like the power of the family and the loyalty of the Harbaugh family. Like, I get emotionally moved when I see stuff like that. But, Jim's not like Nick Saban's a college coach. That's truly who he is at his Kirby Smart. These guys are college coaches. Jim Harbaugh played quarterback in the NFL for 15 years, right? So when you see some of these guys like Frank Reich or Doug Peterson or Jason Garrett forever, like, he's used to not only being in the NFL, but being the guy in the huddle that the other 10 fucking guys look at in the pros, where everyone was getting paid. Now, I get it. In college, people get paid. But clearly there's an itch deep down with Jim Harbaugh. Here's the other thing. In the NFL, from whenever training camp starts till whenever the season ends, whether it's the last week of the season or through the playoffs, it's all football all the time. It's just football, 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 and football. In college, it's not just football. You got to worry about your guys going to class. You got to worry about your guys staying eligible. Now you got to worry about NIL. Every guy on your team is a free agent. Think about that. When you start the season, every single guy on your roster is a free agent. So you not are only recruiting high school kids and have to worry about this transfer portal that you have no clue. Like, in the NFL, when I worked in the office for 2 years and I was a pro scout, you knew who all the impending free agents were. You knew who all the impending restricted free agents are. You could even tell based on contracts, guys likely to be cut after the season, right? Like, Russell Wilson's a good example. He would have been a guy that every team interested in a quarterback would have been evaluating this year, because you go, well, this guy could become available if they cut him at the end of the season. And he's a high-level example, but there are guys like that all over the NFL. So you have a 95% idea of everyone who's going to be available in, February, right? From free agents to restricted free agents and guys getting cut because of contracts. And then obviously things change a little bit as coaches get fired. New coaches go to teams and they don't want a guy, and maybe a guy becomes available for trade that you didn't know was available for trade. Like, that happens. In college, you have no fucking clue. You're just keeping an eye on everything. It's way harder in terms of 365 days. Those 6 months in the NFL are very intense. Long days, scheming, practice, just nonstop football. But once the offseason starts, let's say you're your first round team and out, you might get 2 weeks off from your head coach. Then you kind of loosely maybe go to the Senior Bowl. It's not like you've even watched any of these guys. A lot of guys, coaches now don't even send their assistants to the Senior Bowl. So you just start doing self-scouting, which 9 to 5 type days. The combine, you don't really play a role. Again, a lot of teams no longer even send you to the combine. And then the draft process is pretty light for the coaches. Little evaluating, but it becomes a lot more 9 to 5. And there is no such thing as 9 to 5 in college. 365, not just during the season, immediately when the season ends, then spring ball, spring recruiting, the offseason, you got camps. It never ends. So just in terms of time, if you have a family, which, listen, football guys like spending time around football. So whether it's a little extra time, I don't know if it totally, bothers them. But in the NFL, like we have this much cap space, we have these many draft picks. In college, it's so fluid and so unknown that it can't be that fun. It's why all these coaches, listen, a lot of like most of these guys, if you're making $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million, even if they're complaining, they understand it's an incredible job to make money, right? Jim Harbaugh was rich when he got hired at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh had made millions before he even got to the 49ers. And that was, 10 years ago. Whoever, Jim Harbaugh, whether Michigan gives him $120 million, whether an NFL, it's not about the money. It's just about his lifestyle now and what he wants. So if he doesn't like the setup currently, and he's already said, like, the players should get a cut of the revenue. Well, guess what happens in the NFL? They revenue share. The reason it's basically 50-50 is because the players, the salary cap is based on the league's revenue. So you don't have to deal with any of this unknown, this uncertainty, things that you can't control. Now, you could argue that at Alabama, at Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, you're less likely to lose a lot of guys because you can financially afford to keep them. And, it's obviously an incredible place to play, but it's also for younger players harder to crack the lineup. So if you get there as a freshman, you might look up and you go, God, it might be 2 years before I even get on the field, even though that guy within 2 years could be a really good player for you. It's much easier if you're that guy to go to a lesser program, to go to Nebraska or wherever and just immediately be the starter. So just that element alone has made the sport much more challenging. So Jim Harbaugh's wiring, listen, he's out there. He's a different cat. I can't even pretend to, no one can, to think like he thinks. But I just think if you thought logically, what industry would you rather work in? The one where you can control a lot of it, or the one where, yeah, it's technically easier because you're going to have quote unquote easier games, right? You could argue, depending on the schedule, 4 to 7 games, Michigan is an enormous favorite. And if they just play solid, they're winning easily. And then another 4 or 5 games where it's definitely the talent gap's a little smaller, especially now that they've added the Pac-12 teams. And he's got to be pretty locked in. In the NFL, every game's hard. So it's like, wait, we're all kind of on an even playing field. We all have the same, everyone has the same salary cap space and draft capital. You just choose how you want to use it. The Broncos chose to trade for Russell Wilson and pay him all that money. But they have no different in the draft capital than the Houston Texans or the Cleveland Browns. You just get to, well, why did the Cleveland Browns not have picks? They chose to use the capital on Deshaun Watson. You just get, not everyone has the same capital. Now, in college, he's at a team with a lot of money, but maybe he's bored. Maybe it's like, I'm just playing now for the playoffs. Now, you could argue for his resume, if he loses and leaves and then they get popped, it's not great. That's probably true. But I think it's pretty clear that win or lose Monday, and as a guy with a pretty large ticket on Washington, I hope they lose. It does feel like he's going to go to the pros.